By now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard things about Breath of the Wild 2, right? You guys saw the trailer. I mean, come on, it's playing throughout this video. You guys might be sick of the trailer by now. I don't know. I'm not sick of it, but some of you guys might be. And there's been theories. Can you believe that? I mean, I can. I used to run Legend of Zelda websites, but there are actual theories out there right now from the trailer, from the theories that it's actually a prequel and not a sequel, which I think is absolutely crazy, considering that it says sequel in the trailer. Bill Trinen has repeated several times in interviews that it's a sequel that happens after the events of Breath of the Wild. But whatever, everyone wants to have their little pet theories until we actually have new information about the game. And there's other theories, timeline placements, and all these, just a whole bunch of stuff out there, right? Like, this is what the Zelda community does. It grabs the very little bits of information we know, extrapolates from it, and tries to figure things out. Theories from Demise and Ganon and Ganondorf and what's all happening and the dark nature. And now we know it's darker than Majora's Mask, according to recent interviews. And there's just a lot of things going on out there in the speculation realm. And I actually want to talk to you about a different angle. And that angle is about the importance of this game. Now, personally, I have a little bias for Zelda, right? Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game of all time. I also was editor-in-chief of a place called Zelda Informer for 9 years, ran Zelda Domain for like 6 years before that, worked at Zelda Universe, used to be part of their podcast. I've done a lot of things in the Zelda community. I actually helped found like Zelda Wiki and then all that stuff. I've done a lot of things, okay? But the point I'm making here is that despite my biases, I don't think that this is such a crazy notion that Breath of the Wild 2 or Breath of the Wild the sequel is a vastly important game. I think the most important game of this entire generation so far for Nintendo has been actually Breath of the Wild, because coming off of the Wii U and coming off of the sales or lack of sales success, I really should say, about that system, Breath of the Wild, despite being a Wii U game, really helped launch the Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously, momentum was carried on by, ironically, another Wii U port in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but obviously later on with Splatoon 2 and then Mario Odyssey and all that, there have been a lot of major games that have come out for Switch since Breath of the Wild. But Breath of the Wild is what got everything going, and it's easy to see that Breath of the Wild was a massive success. It sold north of 13 million units when a Zelda game has never sold more than 10 million units. In fact, it's never really sold more than 9. So it is by far and away the most successful Zelda game ever created. So to think a sequel to it is important, I don't know that is that controversial, but I do think what we need to understand is what's happening in the rest of the video game world. So in 2020, we know 100% for sure, because it's been announced, that Xbox Scorpio, or whatever the final name ends up becoming, is launching. We also know at some point, probably next year, we assume, the PlayStation 5 is also launching. We also know next year there's going to be a lot of next-gen games showing off, and we've already seen some people getting hyped for potential games that'll be cross-gen or next-gen, like, Cyberpunk 2077, which admittedly looks great. We also know that, like, the next Elder Scrolls game is likely next-gen. We know things just in general about a whole bunch of third-party games going next-gen. I mean, in general, this E3 actually felt a little light from some third parties, at least with new games, likely because they are working on games for the next generation platforms, and they're not ready to unveil them until those platforms get fully blown out, which I think PlayStation's probably going to do at the PlayStation Experience later this year, but they could possibly wait for 2020 as well to kind of get the momentum there. We don't know when they're planning to launch. Xbox isn't launching until holiday, but we have no idea with PlayStation. And I bring all this up not because Nintendo needs to worry about those systems. They're not really competing directly with Switch in terms of what Switch offers as a hybrid system, but they do need to worry about mindshare, right? Mindshare is a very important thing in the video game world. The longer you can keep the mindshare of consumers, the longer and more successful your platform ultimately becomes. PlayStation has been in the mindshare from day one this generation, and it's why it continues to sell well to this very day and is going to be over 100 million units very soon if it hasn't already reached that plateau right now. And Nintendo has a lot of success with Switch that was kind of let down a little bit in 2018 before Super Smash Bros. Ultimate really helped pick things up. And if you look at the first half of 2019, we're already in June and there hasn't been really a single major release. I mean, yeah, there was Yoshi's Crafted World, and that's great, but from Nintendo's side of things, there really hasn't been much of anything else. The biggest release in the first half might have been a multi-platform third-party game in Mortal Kombat 11, which, yes, did well on Switch, although I don't really know if it was necessarily a system seller, but it definitely didn't hurt things, that's for sure. And now we get into the second half of the year, and we obviously have a lot of things to look forward to. I think the big trifecta of games, now that Animal Crossing is pushed to next year, is Link's Awakening, Luigi's Mansion 3, and, Pokemon, because Pokemon Sword and Shield's always a big deal. Like, Pokemon in general is a big deal. But I don't really think that next gen's going to have much effect on this year. I'm thinking next year Nintendo needs to worry what's going to happen when the holidays hit and everyone's looking to buy that 14 plus teraflop Xbox. Everyone's looking to buy the next PlayStation. Everyone wants the next prettiest game. How can Nintendo combat all that and win some mindshare? That, my friends, is where Breath of the Wild sequel comes in the mix. Now, I don't know that the next Breath of the Wild game, or whatever they end up calling it, it's a sequel. That's not going to be the title of it. It's not going to be called Breath of the Wild 2, but it's going to be a direct sequel. And I don't know that it's going to come next year. It could come next year. I think there is some support for it to come next year. I know a lot of people are tempering their expectations and thinking 2021, maybe 2022, but it is built on the same engine because it is a sequel. Is it going to be purpose-built for Switch? Is it going to look a little bit better? Is it going to run a little bit better? Probably. I mean, the cutscenes we were seeing in the trailer you're watching right now already look a step above what we saw in the original Breath of the Wild on Switch. But the thing is, having all of this stuff already built out, having the physics engine already taken care of, the art style already taken care of, that frees up a lot of creation time to be spent on content. And that means the turnaround can be much quicker. Now, Nintendo has turned around a Zelda game really fast before. Majora's Mask is obviously the one that we're referring to. But this looks to be much bigger in scope than a Majora's Mask because it seems to be still using the world of Breath of the Wild. So it's still going to be this big open world ordeal, or just with new story, new something. I don't know, whatever's next. Because if you saw the true ending of Breath of the Wild, and I don't want to spoil it too much, it kind of ends on a cliffhanger. Not so much a cliffhanger with Ganon per se, but there's like something happening that isn't actually resolved in the game, and it's not resolved in the DLC either. And that something happening feels minor at the time, right? Like, oh, haha, it's just like knowing that Zelda and Link are going to continue on their adventures. But Zelda's never ended like this before. There's never been they're going to continue on their adventures without you. It was clearly a setup for a sequel, as we now know, because a sequel is coming. So I think that this was probably pre-planned out in the first place, which is unique for Zelda, because even Majora's Mask wasn't pre-planned out. And I firmly believe that 2020 isn't far-fetched. Now, 2021 is probably more likely, but I think 2020 could be huge. Because if they drop it with all those other systems out there, Nintendo can't be ignored next year. Animal Crossing is already going to help them start the year in March. But Zelda can be that emphatic, hey, look, you're talking next gen? How about we release another game that's going to be rated as one of the best games of all time? How about that? How do you combat that? How do you prove that people don't need to move on to the next gen? By dropping a game that proves there's still a ton to get from current gen. Now, obviously, this could coincide with the Switch Pro and all that stuff, and that could obviously help Nintendo boost a little bit of new hardware sales, but that's a whole different conversation, and one we'll probably have a bunch next year if the Switch Pro isn't a thing that happens this year. I just know that Breath of the Wild is a huge deal. That's really the only conclusion I can get from both from the reaction on the internet, the views we're seeing on YouTube, how much it's blown up on Twitter. Guys, we got one little trailer for this thing, and it's almost been the dominant conversation at E3. I think the only reason it's not the predominant conversation is because Cyberpunk 2077 just looks that damn good. But if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for potentially Star Wars stealing a little bit of thunder, again, Breath of the Wild or, well, in this case, a Breath of the Wild sequel, is dominating E3 discussions. You can't go anywhere on the E3 show floor without somebody bringing it up. You can't go anywhere on the internet without somebody bringing it up. I couldn't even talk to my dang fiance without her bringing it up, and she doesn't even watch Nintendo Directs. She doesn't care about games, and she knew it happened. That's how big of a deal this is. It's a conversation we're going to continue to have. I don't know when we're going to see the game again, when we're going to see gameplay and not cutscenes. I don't know anything more than what you guys know from watching that trailer, and I could spend forever coming up with theories and making theory videos. Maybe that's something you guys want to see me do, is make some theory videos. I don't know. I used to do that kind of stuff specifically with Zelda, but all I know is this game's really important, and I think it is Nintendo's answer to next gen. It's, hey, don't forget about us. And let me tell you, nobody is going to forget about Breath of the Wild, the sequel. Anyways, you guys let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to share it and like it. Leave a comment, of course. And hey, why not enter our Nintendo Switch Super Smash Bros. Ultimate giveaway through the Gleam.io link down in the description. That's a bundle giveaway for that special edition Switch that released last November. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And you know what? We have lots more content coming your way from E3. So don't worry. We didn't forget about all our E3 coverage. We have a lot more coming. And we'll talk more about that in future videos. All right, guys. Bye.